Hello, good afternoon.
Good
Gonna
afternoon,
see that.
everyone.
Good
Yeah, good
afternoon.
afternoon, everyone. Hey, so welcome to today on Friday's Alumni Corner, Journey to Publishing Own Games with Forest Studios and Roundtable Game Studios. So now this is organized by the University of Wollongong, Malaysia KDU, in conjunction with School Community and Creative Media, Student Alumni Center, and Dice Collective. So let's move on to the case. So this is an event that is meant for current University of Wollongong Malaysia KDU students or UOWMKDU. Is quite a long handful. And to attain your TAC points, you do these two steps. Take a minimum of 2 unique screenshots for this event for your report to the Student Alumni Center, and stay tuned to the very end and to get the event's TAC registration Google form. All right, and for current UOWMKDU SCCM students, you can register here to join our SCCM Discord community by scanning this QR code, or you can click on not just click on type the bit.ly at slash SCCM Discord link. And without further ado, we will now introduce our guest for today, the alumni from the Bachelor of Game Development degree program. So introducing Edison New. And
Hello.
hello there. So Edison New is uh, he came to our bachelor's program as a game designer, and he's now the alumni, and he has worked on various titles from Ammo Box Studios, Eximus, Seize the Front Line, and Forest Studios on the early design of Company Man. But as of now, he is now the CEO and founder of Roundtable Game Studio and plays both management and designer's roles. Next to Edison is Adam Majid.
Afternoon,
Hello,
everyone.
Adam. Hey, hello, afternoon. So Adam Majid has graduated from our Bachelor of Game Development program and has worked on publishing and crossed over into game development in 2 sides. He moonlights as a content creator on YouTube and also as a writer on various platforms. His role at Roundtable Game Studios for Dying Flame revolves around narrative and content creation, marketing, streamer management, and even dabbles in a little bit of social media management as well.
So
All
I'll be
right.
proceeding on. We have here Aiden Wong, that is a ex KDU student alumni itself, currently working as a freelancer game developer who specializes in programming. He has worked with numerous game programs such as Metromic, Emma Box, and Forest Studios, and also Edric Games, among others. Aiden is passionate with marrying creativity with technology to craft an experience in ocean of pixels. And the final panelist that we have is Ling Chao Jun, or other words TJ for short. He's also another alumni from UOWKDU that is currently working for the lead programming for Forest Studio itself, in charge of planning and workflow of for development of the company Man. That's one of the game that just came out. Pipeline. He was previously working with Lemon Sky Studios and Ren Production itself. So this is one of the studios, the Forest. They created last year. The Company Man is a fast-paced platformer where you climb the corporation ladder by literally fighting evil boss, becoming the ACO with a Malaysian twist in it.
And there we have it. This is the trailer for the company man. Now moving on, we're going to introduce to you the game from Roundtable Games Studios. Give me a moment. Wrong button. So Dying Flame is a 16-bit horror puzzle game developed within the RPG Game Maker, and it's a quest of of a husband named Jay, who's actually finding his wife, who's trapped in a mansion as an unknown terror hunts him down. So we're gonna move on to the trailer itself. Yeah. And there we have it. This is the trailer for Dying Flame. So let's move on to the questions for our panelists here. So we're going to start off with Edison. So Edison, after years of working on Eximus and the company man at two different studios, what made you choose the path of setting up Roundtable Games?
Well, aside from external pressure from family, it's more towards timing and everyone else who wants to work on the game. So, well, after a chat with Adam and the gang around at the round table in the dinner table, that is like before the COVID hits, we thought that we should start a company. So I stepped up and Roundtable's Game Studio was born.
Okay, moving on. Let's go to Emran. Emran, is your mic okay?
I'll be moving to the next question. Adam, based on your experience in game publishing and content creation, can you tell us the difference between these two construct of fields?
Well, I'd say that very simply, there are two sides of the same coin. Like a developer will take the concept or idea and make that into a playable game. The publishers are the guys that then take that game and then market it. So the content creator works for the developer. Obviously, whatever content is required, narrative, story, or so on and so forth. So we work under the developer. Publishers take whatever's created that becomes the game and tries to make that for a profit somehow, marketing, selling it, promoting it, and so forth. So I'd say that because they're both sides of the same coin, developers, content creators, and publishers, well, you either get along like a house on fire, as in everything is going really well, or you're going along like a house on fire and everything is about to burn to the ground. It really depends on how well things are set up there for to balance both sides, because both sides have, in a sense, competing objectives. The developers generally, we want to make something that sends a message, tells a story. For example, the publishers are looking more to make money from things. I mean, a good industry example of this would probably be Activision, Blizzard, and Bungie over what happened with Destiny and the increased monetization there, as an example of how that can go bad really quickly. If things aren't well structured between both sides. So it's a challenge to balance both sets of needs equally.
That's quite interesting, as the industry we can see right now is quite deserving in the sense of Blizzard and Activision.
Yeah.
Okay, let's moving on. So, Aiden, within several years, you have experienced working full time as a game developer, and now freelancing in several game studios. Maybe perhaps you can tell us what is the difference between working in the studio and as a freelancer.
Okay, so before I get straight to the question, I'd like
Mm.
to say that if you're starting out as a programmer, I would recommend going for a full-time position first. The reason is because when it comes to freelancing, right? Freelance games programming is very different compared to freelance art, unfortunately. So what I mean by that is that with art, you can typically draw a picture within, say, a day or two, and then you can get the job done with relatively less back and forth. However, with games programming, this is usually not the case. There's a lot more things to consider, and games in nature are iterative, and there's a lot of back and forth in development. With that said, there actually isn't as much opportunities when it comes to freelance games programming versus freelance art. The reason why I was able to do this up until now is because of timing and opportunity. So going back to your question, right?
Mm.
I think the biggest difference between a full-time position and a freelance position is that you are leveraging your time versus your skills. So what I mean by that is that with a full-time job, typically you come into the office and you work for 8 hours a day. They are paying you a fixed rate for your time spent. So if you finish your job fast, you'll still have to stay in the office, and your boss may give you more work to do to maximize your output. With freelance, however, you have the option to leverage your skills instead. So instead of being paid based on your time spent, you can instead negotiate to be paid to get a particular job done or to bring a certain value to your client. So if you get the task done faster, you can move on to other stuff. And there's also the opportunity to make higher income now because now you are a business owner as opposed to an employee. So yeah.
So but in this kind of sense, let's say for example, as a full time, you provide a certain task as a programmer, no, within all the time periods and all the days. But as a freelance programmer, no, no, are you given specific task that is considered to be done by you? And is it, and on what case is it under the level of classification?
Sorry, can you repeat your question again?
Oh, all right. So, for example, as a full time worker, right? And you're given 8 hours to do whatever task is necessary as the programmer itself. But in conjunction, but for freelancing, as for freelancing, no, you're given all the time you need, no, with like a specific deadline. But the amount of task given would it be the same amount, and is there a level of classification within each task, because you are freelancing?
Okay, so it's really difficult to answer this question because different teams have different requirements. So let me just start by giving some examples. So with Forest Studio, my role was more like a solution provider, I feel, in a sense where my main role was to handle the code base. So I created the base code for the game and then pass it off to TJ to do the game design iterations. So by doing that, I help to absorb most of the complexity of games programming without also completely spending all of my time on one project. Because now my role was very straightforward. I'm typing code to get it done. But the iterations are all done by TJ, putting in the sounds, putting in the animations, setting up the levels, crafting the game. So in that sense, I don't have that much control over the game design. But on the other hand, I get to do my work fast and then move on to other stuff, So I'm really grateful for the team for that opportunity. And I think that this worked out really well for our collaboration. With Eldritch Games, on the other hand, my role was slightly different because it's a really small team and I was the only programmer for that particular project. So I had to wear multiple hats for this project. So different teams, different requirements.
All right.
Right. TJ, I have some questions that as one of the major seniors here in the whole panel, you have come and gone through game studios, both big and small, and currently at Forest Studios. Perhaps you can tell us difference between working in a small and large studio.
Okay. As in terms of senior, I won't really say as a major senior because both Edison and Adam are my seniors as well. But overall, as terms of my experience so far, like going through Lemon Sky Studios and as well now with Forest Studios, previously ran production. I think the main difference is when you enter a large studio, you are a small piece in a very large puzzle. So at that point of time, a lot of your work is done solely on a single feature or a task base of list. But you don't you'll be very good at doing that one thing. Like take for example, if let's say you're a graphic programmer and you do everything shaders every day, you'll be a very good graphic programmer by the end. But sometimes when later on when you go on to see the actual game your stuffs are used in, you won't know about the rest of the systems because other teams will be handling it. But when you come to a smaller studio itself, it'll be point back to a bit like how Aiden addressed his experience when working with studios when you're the only programmer. You have to wear multiple hats because at that point of time when you're in a small studio, um, you get to see how the business runs and you actually learn a lot more because everything's so much closer to you now. I feel that's the biggest difference when you enter a large and small studio.
Wow, that's actually a great distance from there. Yeah. By your opinion, do you like to work in big studios or small studios?
Mm, if I were to like personally now, my current situation, I would prefer to work in smaller studio. But when it comes to it depends on everybody's risk, I would say.
Mm.
So
I see.
if you're not so much of a risk taker, you prefer to be more comfortable with your job, you won't be thinking, oh, next month, next year, will I still have work? A larger studio, will have that kind of security for you. Or for smaller studios itself, you are pushing forward, making good content so that your studio can continue on.
I see. This will be good foresight for our future students who's going to work in the industry itself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next question for Edison. So this is in regards to Dying Flames. During its development, it has been it was close to a year, and I believe there must be some challenges in developing the game in such a short time. Can you tell some stories about it?
Well, one comes to mind immediately for my end is handling Steam related stuff like the artwork requirement, the
Ah,
audio, and the feedback process takes really a period of time. But because during the time back and forth between me and Steam, because COVID situation, so the team takes like sometimes from 3 days to a week just to get back to me and say that, oh, you're missing this. Oh, sorry, the backend system is gone. So yeah, so we're a bit worried over how long the process was taking.
the
And that's
this
one.
no that would mean the Steam's reply over the no, it's like you're trying to publish it on Steam, but due to the pandemic, it even affected the way they handle their publications.
It's yeah, because from certain time, like one night, they already immediately replied, but for other times, they just like cost 1 week to reply. So it's a bit it's a bit weird lah. It's a bit weird lah. I guess maybe some other studios will have a bit lucky, but for our end, it's like zun, 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 small big. So Very weird.
What, what about any other challenges within its development time, like any programmings or design or even art challenges?
Well, for certain end, it's very creative blindness lah. We can't tell woods from trees or something like that. Work on a game long period of time, and because you've been stuck in the development scope for a long time, you won't be able to see
Mm.
the flaws problem until you rope in new people in, which hence leads down to the second thing, which is testing the game. No face to face. We can't bring in random people from from different streets or different departments, you know, just to test our game. So because the testing periods was started halfway through our lockdown, so for my end I only able to get like one or two people to record,
Oh,
and then for Adam's end I was also only able to get one or two people. But once the lockdown starts, it's like shit, can't get more people in. So it gets harder for us to do recording, get video feedback. So we are heavily dependent on written feedback, which is cause sometimes very hard for us to understand and use. So after the game published, we only get more feedback. It's like, okay, continue patching, continue patching, continue patching.
ah, so despite having a short development time, the amount of feedback was given it was during its publication, and therefore the any changes and updates has to be upon its release of the itself.
Mm. So it's like before and after lah. So we're still looking at the game, even though we technically already discussing on more future projects.
Mm.
But when the feedback comes in, it's like, okay, we have to come back in and then we just have to fix some of the minor problems.
So moving forward, would you repeat the same process, or would you prefer feedback more before releasing?
We actually prefer more feedback. We need to know what's going on. We need to know whether or not if some of the designs were good or some of the designs were bad. I think because we could carve in our room for a long period of time.
I see. The other maybe you can inject some your comments about that.
Regarding the development and the testing,
Yeah.
yeah, for us it was challenging to do testing because for us we were halfway through our test phase and then the lockdown started to hit. So our testers suddenly, we couldn't call people in, we couldn't do one-to-one testing because at one point when we were doing some testing, we would rely heavily on video feedback that we would record of them playing the game. But once the lockdown hit, we couldn't do that anymore. So then we started having to rely on screen capture or recordings of their gameplay, but that just showed their screen. So that wasn't very useful when we're trying to gauge, is this scary enough? We need the players' reactions. No? So that proved to be quite a challenge for us to actually do the testing because we had to rely a lot more on their written feedback as well. And for English, it's not everybody's first language, so there was a bit of a language issue there as well. Sometimes they're trying to describe something, and we're sitting there going, "What?" I remember I got a couple of friends in Europe to play test the game, and because I had to rely on their written feedback, somebody was talking about what was something in inside the game in the kitchen space. They couldn't remember the English word for knife, so they were writing it in French. He's a
Oh
French buddy of
no.
mine.
Oh.
So I'm looking at this going la couture, and I'm like, what is a couture? And I'm trying to Google up what is couture in English. Is this something I've never seen before? It just didn't click. So this kind of things that can happen. But I mean,
Right.
otherwise, yeah, that was one of the things that I remember fondly, or not so fondly. Thank you, COVID lockdown.
Right. Thank you, Adam, for the answer. Okay.
Mm.
Adam, not
Yeah.
only that you did playtest, but according to your profile, you also involved in Dying Flames development, but also did the marketing of the game on
Mm.
social media itself. Can you elaborate more on how your strategies on how did you do the marketing itself?
A little bit. I can't give away the company secrets, of course.
Oh.
But
Oh, that's
but
street secrets.
yeah, but what I can share is that when you're creating content for social media, you need to understand the audience on the different platforms first, and then tailor your content to that platform. What works, for example, on Facebook is not going to work as well on Instagram, and definitely won't work on something like 9gag or Imgur or Reddit. Now in terms of platforms, the main ones are the big five: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube/Twitch. Those are the three main ones that everybody knows. Now, if you're looking for gamers specifically, because you're trying to sell to that market, that audience, you want to go look at Reddit, find subreddits for games or topics that are similar. So since Dying Flame is a horror game, we went looking not just at horror games, but also for things like horror movies, horror stories. What is that thing? Those writing challenge places that focus on horror tropes, horror themes. We went in there and put up a couple of posts to promote as well. So you need to find your audience and go there. Now, the platforms I've listed so far, those are great for finding players. If you're looking to build a bit more of an industry presence, then LinkedIn and Twitter actually is a really great place. If you want to get into game dev and find out what's happening globally, get a Twitter account and just join the groups. For Malaysia, for Australia. Australia is Twitter crazy on the game development side, and the US as well, UK too. So they're quite active there. So if you want to build an industry presence, so that will be the main one for social media platforms. Can I segue a bit on using influencers here?
Sure,
Yeah, why not?
Like
Yeah,
and stuff.
it's the 21st century. That's how the world
Yeah.
works now. Yeah.
So in terms of influencers, it's a lot like social media because in this case, you have to get the right influencers playing your game. You say get an influencer, most people immediately jump to the big names. PewDiePie when he used to game stream, Jacksepticeye, Markiplier. Everybody thinks of the big guns. These guys will give you great visibility, but visibility does not mean sales. You actually want to look more towards the mid-tier streamers. These are the guys with maybe a few 100,000 followers and even tens of thousands of followers, or even smaller to the micro and nano level. Because if you've got a guy, like for us, a lot of the streamers that we ultimately work with, they were smaller, but they focus on horror games. They focus on playing RPG Maker games. So these guys literally have a targeted audience for our game. So that became far more valuable in terms of conversions, leads, and everything than just giving it to Markiplier to play. Well, sadly, he didn't play. I wish he had, or Jacksepticeye even. So make sure you get the right influencers. It's the same sort of thing, But I would say focus more on the mid-tier than the the very, very big streamers. Because for them, ultimately, the larger streamers, being very honest here, it's how they make a living. So if you can sign an endorsement deal with them, they'll happily promote whatever. Whereas the mid-tier ones are the ones that actually, in a sense, have more of an enjoyment and a belief and a passion in what they're doing. It's not so much business anymore. It's still a passion, more a passion than a business. At least that's what I've experienced so far.
Speaking speaking of mid-level influencers, what about local influencers on our end? Not just Malaysia, but maybe in Southeast Asia itself.
Okay, there are quite a few of them. We worked with a lot of actually Malaysian streamers and influencers, particularly on Facebook gaming. Oh, I forgot about that for platforms. Actually, I'd put it as YouTube, Twitch, Facebook gaming because that one is really coming up in Southeast Asia, especially. So, like for Facebook gaming, who did we work with? Micho the Harambe. She's Malaysian. Ferb, who's actually KDU alumni as well, I think, and a few others as well. Yuki Christie. Who else? Oh, a lot of names. I'd have to look them up, but those are the ones that come immediately to mind. So yeah, if you're looking at local talent, we definitely have local streamers that are happy to support. Promote and play your game. Essentially, you just have to reach out to them.
This is one of
yeah.
them.
That's actually quite surprising because last year there are sense that some YouTubers in stream when they did with their friends playing around, such as Rust, it actually increased the number of players around the same time as they're playing it.
Yep.
But is there actually an effect during the pandemic?
Has what affected through the pandemic?
In sense of marketing a game itself, is there a difference between during the pandemic and before the pandemic in marketing? You have
That's a good question. I don't have the data of off the top of my head, but personally, I don't think it's made that much of an impact in terms of how we market or where we market our games.
Mm.
Because the platforms haven't changed. Facebook is Facebook, Instagram is Instagram. The platforms themselves haven't changed. But what's happening now is that the platforms are becoming more crowded. I don't mean there are more games. I mean there's just more stuff being promoted. Once upon a time, it was maybe if you scroll your Facebook feed, you'd see an average of one advert every 5 to 10 posts. Now, new metrics indicate that's as low as one every 3 posts. And it's not all gaming adverts. You're seeing them selling everything now, from chairs, furniture, food products. So now the platform itself is becoming way more crowded. So it becomes actually a marketing issue or marketing spend problem to determine whether you're actually getting any visibility and your money's worth.
Mm.
So that I won't bore you with the details, but that goes into your targeting metrics and how you do all of that. That could be a talk in and of itself, to be honest with you.
We have classes for this also.
I need to go back to who's teaching that class. I might need to jump back into that one.
We'll figure it out somehow. Okay,
Great.
let's continue. Let's continue on to the next questions. Right, then Nathan, can you tell
Yeah.
us a bit more about your journey as a freelancer and how you came into work with Forest Studios and also in any other studios that you have worked with once you got
Right.
freelance?
Right. Okay. So I've actually been doing freelance for a while. But let me just say that freelance games programming, it's kind of like before that it was kind of like on and off. I was just doing it like just taking on random jobs here and there for people who need them. Um, so how I came uh, to Forest Studio was that right after I left Metronomic, TJ, who was my senior at KDU last time, he was one of the first few people that reached out to me for some help with Forest Studio. So we talked a bit, and then I decided to collaborate with them. Uh, Aside from Forest Studio, Jeremy from Ammo Box also reached out to me during that same time. So those two were like my first freelance jobs right after I left my full-time job. Initially, when I left my full-time job, I didn't actually plan to do like freelance up to this level. The reason why I left my full-time job was because I wanted to continue my studies this year actually. But sadly, because of the pandemic, that plan kind of had to take a back seat. Uh, so in the meantime, I didn't know how long the pandemic was gonna last. So I decided to, hey, maybe try to take on more freelance projects, and things just proceeded from there. So right now, aside from doing freelance, I'm also doing some studies on my own, going through tutorials, stuff like that, for what I want to do in the future. So in that sense, I guess, like freelance is kind of a good opportunity for me. Um, on one hand, I get to utilize my skills to help more indie studios. And on the other hand, I'm not tied to a full-time job. I'm not tied to an 8 hours per day job. After I finish my work, my task that was given to me, I can move on to other things like working on my own personal projects and stuff like that.
But that also came with the fact that you did have some credentials that you did work in Metronomic and other companies full time. Would that mean for any student who graduate from a game development degree, you did advise, okay, take full time first, and once you're done having having some amount of experience in those studios, you can now work as a freelancer, provided that the connections is also a key ingredient towards freelancing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. So let's head on to the next question. Emran.
I have a question for you, TJ.
Yep.
As you're the lead programmer of the company man in developing the game itself, was there any criteria for the game when you're publishing it on Steam itself?
Criteria. For Steam itself, The main criteria is that you must have a game. That's like the bare minimum when you put it up before they allow you to actually have your store page up. So you will need to send them like a playable build first in order for them to say that, yep, you are not doing anything dodgy. You're actually trying to put a game up on the store. And then after that, with a bunch of back and forth with Steam itself, they will start to check through things like, oh, you advertise, for example, there's controller support. Some of the things here don't work with controller, and they will start to tell you, and you'll have to fix it and back and forth with them to the point everything is done. The so-called achievements is all in there as well. What you advertise on the page is actually what the customer is getting. I think they're looking it from the kind of standpoint. And once that is done, then they'll greenlit your game, and then you will get the publish button.
Well, that's quite interesting itself because Steam's helping you to tell you what can you do and all that, communicating with each other, how small certain games can be and also how big they still give the time to give communications. So, but I have another question: is that um, as the rise between Epic Games Launcher and also Steam, do you feel that Steam is still competitive enough in the future to be the main launcher of any game? And would you put your game in Epic Games also?
In terms of different platforms to distribute your games, right now, from looking it from a developer's point of view, Steam still has the most end user things that your game can use. So a good example would be when Epic Games first launched, they didn't have cloud saving, but Steam already has that built in, and it's very easy to set it up for your games, and you don't have to run your own servers to save the player's high score, because Steam already does that on their own servers. And with a bunch of other stuff like Linux support as well on Steam. There's also, I think, online co-op play as well, couch play they call it for Steam, which Epic Games still have a lot of this coming out. And yes, Epic Games Store has come a long way. Previously, they didn't have like a proper store page and stuff like that and regional pricing, but now they're slowly rolling out all the stuff. But in the future, Epic Games has to do something different to bring in like users and stuff to their store.
Well, that's quite interesting also, but it goes back also what I actually learned is that the server, such as the server things that Epic Games provide the server as, I learned that servers are actually expensive for a company game to maintain in a sense of way if a number of players that much. So in the end, do you require to have your own servers, or are you planning to do it, or you're just continue to use the Steam servers in the future?
I think as for now, we don't really have plans for Epic Games stores, like anything to do with Epic Games Store as of now. But we definitely still want to keep an eye out as well. Like if something does change in the future and it looks, it looks enticing to small developers to come in and you can easily then roll out your game there. Yeah, sure. We will definitely do it.
Yeah, on the topic of Steam, I think recently they announced their Steam Deck, on the console, handheld console. So maybe perhaps for Forest Studio and round Table Game Studio, maybe give some comments. No, whether would you want to make that your games compatible to the upcoming Steam Deck?
Regarding Steam Deck itself, if I'm not mistaken, the company man does run on Steam Deck right now.
Wow, so if someone buys the Steam Deck, they can actually just play the game immediately. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, this is one of the reasoning why Steam has been, there's so much back and forth, especially when we put controller support, because they were so back and forth. That's like, no, it needs to work with the whole Steam thing. That's like, oh, okay.
This is actually
So,
really
yeah.
good, interesting facts because some people are still debating on the Epic Games and Steam which launcher they want to use, and it seems that Steam is still in the priority lead of launching games in their launches.
I think if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, Steam already announced that majority of their games in their store will be compatible as long as you just install Steam in there. So
Mm.
most of the game will automatically be connected and work. So if let's say for our game like Dying Flame, by theory it should work as well.
But by theory, so unless once the Steam Deck is released, then we get to see the feedback towards whether the controller systems are working or not.
Mm.
But that also shows that the Steam does has a very thorough review over their control schemes, not just by keyboard but even through controllers.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on to the next set of questions. This is for all the panelists to answer. All right, so this is quite an interesting question for this session. During your time as a student in UOW, actually previously KDU, now can you share what subjects you felt were the most impactful in helping you develop games?
Uh,
It's
Oh
Okay,
more
boy.
experience for us if you say some words.
we can start with Edison first, then we move on to Adam, then TJ, and Aiden.
Well, for my end, I mean, there is definitely a lot of subjects that taught me about how to make a game and then how to ensure the stability of the management and everything. But the first thing that thought of my head, because I'm still a designer by heart, is the genre studies. And because practically over my career, with the help of starting out the earlier prototype of Company Man and doing level design and some small content for Eximius, um, practically just play the genres that were part of the game. Like for Eximius, for example, like you do need not just a knowledge of the RTS, but you also need a lot knowledge of FPS as well. But for my end, I have a lot of back and forth with Jeremy Chu on the earlier time over how the RTS elements should handle and work. So not just that I have to because the reasons why I'm able to talk with him is because I thought because I have both of us shared an interest on a particular game called Companies of Hero, and both of us love this game a lot. So his Eximius take a lot of inspiration from that game, and because of my heavy playtime on that game, I able to give a lot of feedback to him, like why certain element works, why certain element doesn't work. And for that, and not just that we log into Companies of Hero as well, we also scroll through other games like Warcraft 3, StarCraft, and even like some small obscure games like Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle Earth, and all this kind of stuff. So we take and then we study, like say, okay, why is it that this RTS genre works in this way and that way, and how is it incorporated into Eximius? So this is why for me, genre studies is quite important because we when we say RTS game, we don't just look at the main structures, main context of RTS, and then say, okay, just base building, and then you have to mine stuff, and then you have to generate resources. We also have to take a look at the fluff element of it, and we have to take a look at the what makes ARTS works. Like, do you not only just command units, but you also have to take the elements of war, and then you just take elements of how you push and pull units, or do you want to do blobbing, all this kind of stuff, and then match together in. So that's just one take for me lah. Yeah.
All right, how about Adam?
For me, it was actually pretty easy because I was doing content creation before I came into the game development program, before I even joined KDU for the game development program. So for me, I was interested in being a content designer. So for me, I knew immediately what was important to me. That would, of course, be games narrative, game world creation, to a lesser extent, level design, multiplayer design, and game futures. Those would be the subjects that really were useful and relevant to me personally. And don't get me wrong; those were the most relevant subjects to me because I wanted to be a content designer. But all of the subjects helped shape how good I am as a designer. I mean, even things like experience design, UI UX classes and everything. All of that was very very useful. But those were the five subjects that really stood out to me. So I think it'll differ for everybody depending on what they want it to be. I suppose you could say what kind of designer, for example, or what kind of programmer even.
How about DJ? How about TJ?
The most important class would be object-oriented programming and OOCD. I forgot the name, but OOCD and object-oriented programming. Those two would be the ones that when you study it, it doesn't really make sense. But once you actually use it in like real-world applications, and start putting it in your game, then it starts to click. Oh, this makes sense now. Yeah. Yeah, those two actually help out the most.
Okay, how about Aiden?
This is kind of a difficult question for me because I feel that all of the subjects in the course played a role in my development one way or another. So in that sense, all of the subjects were useful for me. What I really like about the course is that every semester we are creating at least one game. So over the course of 3 years, I've managed to build up like a portfolio of like over like 15 to 20 mini games that I can proudly show on my portfolio. Back then I was really enthusiastic, so I really spent a lot of time on my programming assignments. I was really passionate about it. So even like those simple assignments, I tried to make up like a story behind the game and what's it about, and I tried to make it feel polished so I can put it up onto my web page. Aside from the subjects itself, I think that the community really helps a lot because the difference between learning stuff on your own and actually going to a university is that when you go to a university, you get to meet a community of like-minded people, and these like-minded people can help to challenge you, and they can collaborate with you. You can share your knowledges with each other and help each other grow. And I feel that the value of the community itself is something that is well worth. It was very worth it to me. So yeah.
But
I have a question. From this community that you learned when you were at KDU, did it actually have some effect when you go into a game in the company itself when you're working with different people?
Yes, I feel it does. One of the biggest reasons why I'm able to do freelance now is because of the connections that I've built up over the past several years. Aside from that, game development is a kind of like it's a very collaborative environment in a sense where your work affects other people's work and other people's work will affect your work. So one way or another, you need to be able to communicate with other people.
So your answer would mean that every subject to you was important. But given a choice, like is there any just one or two subjects that really gives you the biggest impact or made you realize, hey, maybe this is something that I could learn and apply when I do graduate?
It's a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
Let me think about it. Perhaps I think the first few subjects that I took up in KDU, which was fundamentals of programming, data structures and algorithm. I think those are really important, and it's something that I wish more students would pay attention to in those classes as well, because a lot of the students which I see, right, once they reach their second year and they start to take like the Unity subjects, they start to forget a lot of the fundamentals that they were taught. The fundamentals was more of like the stepping stone for them to learn Unity, and then once they learn Unity, they don't really look back towards the fundamentals. And I think that is something that is not so good because as a programmer, right, you're not just when you go to a higher level, you're not just scripting games, you know. You want to be able to plan out the code base, you want to be able to foresee potential problems that your code may have, and that's where fundamentals really come in. Because when you have good fundamentals, you plan out your code base properly, uh, this code base will help a lot of people down the pipeline, you know. So let's say like we want to implement newer features, it'll be easier to slot in those newer features as opposed to just if you don't plan out your code base properly, down the road, like maybe 1 or 2 years in your development, you may get stuck halfway, and it might take longer to develop new features.
Mm.
And I think that as a freelancer, my role usually revolves back to this knowledge which I have about fundamentals. It's not so much of like, you know, the newer technologies which I know about, but it's more towards like helping teams plan out their code base. So a lot of the teams that I work with, they are usually stuck in the middle of their project where they try to maybe they try to create a prototype but halfway they got stuck and they don't know what to do. And that's where I come in and help them to plan out the code base. Like, hey, maybe you should do these things this way, maybe you should do it that way. And a lot of the times, when you plan out your code base properly, you realize that, you know, rather than needing like 5 or 6 programmers to handle one project, that project can be done with 1 or 2 programmers if those programmers plan out things properly.
Mm. So TJ, do you share the same sentiments as Aiden?
I would say so as well. It's important as well. Like fundamentals is one thing.
Mm.
Understanding what you're doing is another thing as well also. So the whole point of like introducing to programming and fundamentals programming, like why there's a build up to it so that you understand what's going on, not memorize it, understand what's going on first, and then you move on. Yeah.
Okay, to maybe as an extension to these questions, aside from the most impactful, perhaps I believe everyone here has a hand on GPS 1, GPS 2, and FYP itself. So perhaps you can tell us your stories on which one was it that really made an impact towards how you develop games.
For my end would be GPS 1.
GPS 1
funny-
itself,
Sorry?
GPS 1. So that is your choice. Yeah, but
Because that game is the reasons why me and my programmer were sent to Shanghai.
wow.
Wow, just for GPS 1, okay.
Yeah, if I know
Congratulations, man.
that was like several years ago. A long time ago.
Well,
I give
working
credit
abroad.
Oh,
but credit is credit to that it was my programmer who does a lot of hard work because I'm the only designer in there. So with help with my lecturers, sometimes I have to go back and forth with my designer, and then we end up creating what it is lah. So shout out to Joel Wong if you're watching this.
and he's in your team right now as well, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
Joel is our actually he's our programmer lah with Roundtable.
Yeah,
So GPS 1 brought you guys together.
yeah. So yeah, that's for my end lah.
Mm. How about the rest? Perhaps, yeah, Adam.
Oh, for me, I would have to say I think it was my FYP. Excuse me, that's my cat. He's just trying to take over the stream again.
Mm.
Yeah, but for me, I think it would have to have been the FYP because there was again my situation was a little bit weird when I was a student at KDU because I was also working there full time and studying full time as well. So I did a lot of my subjects out of order. Like I did, for example, genre studies. Not genre studies. I did my GPS 1 before I did the fundamentals of game development course, just because of the way timing worked out for things. I couldn't get to some classes and things in a given semester. So for me, it was my FYP for certain because that was where I actually worked solo because I was out. I was in this disconnected state. A lot of the students didn't quite know who I was or how I fit into things. So they didn't know me too well, so they weren't too comfortable working with me. I think also it's partly because I traumatized my GPS 2 team quite badly.
Eh.
That's another story for another day. But yeah, so for my FYP, I worked solo. So I got to create exactly what I wanted to create from start to finish. So I created something that was very narrative driven, very agency driven. So like in a given place, I remember my GPS, at some points my players had 3, 4 different choices to make. And if they made one choice, they would wind up on a completely different narrative path by design, and things like that, which I hadn't really been able to explore before because there was always a team that I had to kind of solicit input from, get feedback from. Here it was, I want it this way, I'm going to make it this way, and that's it because there was only me.
As a designer in that.
As a designer, no, I was solo. So I did the design. I had to improvise on the art quite a bit. So there was me involved in all sorts of goofy poses and things for different bits and pieces because I created a sort of a graphic novel type story, graphic novel adventure, if you will. So single player.
Oh, that's quite an interesting game that you did during.
Yeah, I think I still have it somewhere.
I would try it if I can.
Maybe I'll have to look for it. If I can find it, I'll be happy to share it. I should probably put it up somewhere.
Hey, so how about TJ?
So, I think the one that actually got me here today will be my FYP.
Ah,
Yeah, so I met my boss Andrew back in university when I was actually showcasing my FYP itself. So he came over, he was interested in the whole games industry in Malaysia. He had plans for it. So I was like, oh sure, then we made through a connection because I was showcasing my game and he really liked it from then. Then from then afterwards, yeah, FYP got me that connection. I met him again in Lemon Sky, and then he did say that he was thinking about opening his own studio. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like hop onto it. So yeah, FYP got me here because of the showcase.
Great. Let's go, Nathan.
So I think I would prefer the FYP as well. Because FYP is the culmination of your skill sets. It's what you've learned throughout the entire 3 years of your studies in the course, and it's you have the freedom to create what you want, who you want to team up with. Who you want to work with, and you're not compared to the previous subjects where you were still trying to figure out stuff. Now it's the time to execute whatever you've learned up until now. So yeah.
We have pre-cup study and everything.
Actually, I forgot to add one last thing.
Yeah, sure, go
I
ahead.
think I totally forgotten that the one of the Shanghai nominated games for my game is still in KDU. I think it's one of the office there.
One in the office? Well, we'll probably have to check it out.
Yeah, the game called.
No, right. Yeah, right after. Hopefully, when this pandemic ends.
We can take pictures with it. Coming back to both of your companies, do you plan on the future of making new games that you have not publicly say anything, or you're going to say in a few months? Or is it secret in a sense of way you cannot tell?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
The question is, going back to company, was that are you releasing any new games in the upcoming future and of 2021 or in the early 2022? Do you have plans for it?
Secret for now.
Secret.
We
It's
still,
classified information.
We're
Yeah.
we're 80% certain we're working on a game. I think. Was it 70%?
I'm sure that you guys are, right? Because you guys are a game studio. You're not an outsourcing studio. So if you're not working on your own IPs, then what else are you working on?
As I said, 70 to 80% sure it's a game of some sort.
But do subscribe to our Facebook channel lah. Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter, and Instagram. So
Yeah,
anything
Sure.
we announce there.
And it's
definitely.
the Hub of Four Studios.
Studio for now, the idea is still there.
Ah,
We're still keeping it up. So definitely, yes. Do check out both of our Facebooks, both Forest Studio and Roundtable. Yeah, do check back with the local shout out to Games HQ as well. Yeah, go and check out there, all the industry people there. So yeah. If there's any news on, if you're looking to expand the team or even make the new game, we're asking people and stuff like that, yeah. Check out there.
all right. Then, on the topic of games, so with the release of Dying Flame and the Company Man, do you have any plans of releasing these two on consoles, such as the PlayStation or the Xbox,
We're
Or the
still in the
Steam
middle of
Deck.
discussion.
or even just Steam Deck, even on Nintendo as well?
We're still in the middle of discussion lah. So no real plans yet until our announcement lah. In the
Mm.
future.
I think for
Just give us
Nintendo Switch itself, nothing confirmed about it yet, but definitely looking into it still. Yeah.
Oh, for Company Man itself.
Yeah.
Ah,
But
nice.
just give people hope that in the future we can play in consoles also, so that would be fun.
Mm.
All right, let's get on to let's say it's already 3 o'clock. Okay, let's just try to wrap these things up so we can move on to more Q&A. Perhaps you can give it a word of advice to all the SCCM students here who are listening to this panel.
Word of advice.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Well, this is just for me as a designer. I would recommend for both designer and artist to familiarize with programming scripting, even for the basic one. So at least where you're able to script some cheap, easy prototyping, and you can showcase. Or if let's say you are bad at scripting, just use building blocks, and then you just take camera, chuk, 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 all different frames, and then say, okay, when this conditions is happening over here, I want this thing to happen on this A to B,
Recording.
something like that. Just draw it out. That's my advice lah.
I would second that as well, because these days there are a lot of tools. There are plenty of tools to help artists and designers to get started with scripting without having much fundamentals in programming. And these days, it's very easy to, let's say, learn. If you want to learn the Unreal Engine's blueprint system, it's very easy to just go on YouTube and just start googling, just start searching, how do you do this or how do you do that. There's plenty of tutorials on that. Likewise, I would also like to add on to that I also feel that it is important for artists. It is important for programmers and designers to also learn a bit of art, because game development is very collaborative in nature, and it just helps that you guys understand what each other is talking about. So programmers understand the artistic value of a certain thing, and also artists understands the technical complexity of a certain feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of getting the idea out, it's best to explain it in pictures or simple animations or maybe a screen capture from another game. to actually showcase, to say like, hey, I actually want this guy to jump like this particular character, not just this one jump. Can you do it? So it's good in communication, because sometimes it's difficult to get things into words. It's very difficult. So having a picture or even an animation, some form of video that you can show people and explain to them. Oh, I just want this 0.5 second. This part where he jumps with his left foot. Yeah, I want that. That is like the best way to actually get things across.
While I was working with Forest Studio, right, I think that is that both Andrew and TJ did very well. They communicated their ideas very well. They were willing to listen, like on art feedbacks, programming feedbacks, design feedbacks, and of course they don't take all of the feedbacks. They filter through it and decides what's best for the game. But it is this understanding that makes them such powerful game designers as well as programmers. So TJ, for example, he was handling a lot of he was not just handling programming, he was also handling like a lot of other stuff like the level designs, helping the artists set up their animations as well as art assets, helping the sound designers set up their sound. And as a programmer, you have to be, as a games programmer, you have to be able to understand the value of this, like the perspectives of this sound designers as well as artists, like where they're coming from, like how do they see things. And while I was working with Forest Studio, right, one of the ways that we handle the pipeline was that they would usually when they wanted to have like the enemies to do certain things, right? So they would create presentation slides of how the enemies would behave, and they would do like simple animations to showcase how the enemy should move and how it should attack. And that was very useful for me because with that presentation slides, it was very clear what I needed to do. So I just by looking at that slides, I can go off and then do my own stuff and then come back 1 week later and then present it to them. So it was just a very smooth workflow.
Yeah, the PowerPoint slide was several hundred pages for some of them. Because of how much movement there was in some of them as well. So
So I'm not sure if I can show it, but basically what they did was that they would take the character slide, they would take the character sprite, and then for each of the slides, they would just move them around to show how the character should move.
Okay.
That's really quite incredible that you do over 1,000 slides to just show a certain animation to let everyone understand itself. I feel that this is something for me as a designer and going GPS next year. It's something that can be applied to me, I think. And
well, it wasn't 1,000. I think it was more like 50 to 100.
50 to 100,
and Andrew really spent a lot of time preparing those slides. And those slides is not just for me. It's not just for me. It's also for the animators who are freelancers, so that they can get an idea of what they need to animate.
That's just incredible. I can say that. The time also to do it is so mind blowing. I can say that.
So moving on, continuing on with your question, right? I think that the most important thing that I would like to emphasize to students is to show your work to the public. I don't see a lot of students doing it these days. There are some which are really proactive and some which are quiet about their work. And you might feel like, oh, I'm not good enough to show my work. There's a lot of better stuff out there. But really, the fact that you've done something at all or is learning how to do something means that you can talk about it, And sometimes talking about your work leads to serendipitous encounters, like how PJ brought up just now, how he met Andrew by showing his FYP, and how how Edison and Joel went to Taiwan to showcase their work. Uh, so yeah, it leads to a lot of serendipitous encounters and more opportunities for you. So, for example, there are times when I show my work and some people reach out to me and they say, "Hey, your stuff is cool." Then I take a look at their work and I find that I like their stuff too, and then we end up collaborating together. So a lot of the connections and friends that I've made in this industry is because I took the first step to showing my works out there, and I feel that a lot of students should also take these proactive steps to showing their work to the public, even if they have something that's very raw or very raw. They can still show it to the public and say, like, "Hey, I'm trying to learn this stuff." And you never know, maybe someone might come along and say, "Hey, I've done this stuff before. I can help you with it." Or maybe like you're looking for a job and you show your work, and then people see your work and they say, "Hey, I really like that work. Do you want to collaborate together?" Stuff like that.
Mm.
I never actually thought about that, but that's actually quite true what you're saying, that you gain connection through opening up to people, even so you don't know them, and especially people outside from the university itself. I think, it can grow your trust circle around, even so before you finish university itself.
Mm-mm. And it's not just a matter of like showing off, you can do it tactfully, you can do it humbly, but just keep in mind that, it is very important to show your work out there, and, and not just show your work out there, but also take a look at other people's work. And that's how you make connections in the industry.
I see.
Okay,
So I
how
guess,
about yeah? Go ahead.
okay, so I guess I'm the last one here. I think that for a lot of students who go into game development, I think one of the things that is actually overlooked is right at the outset. You need to check if you as a person you're a good fit for this industry. I mean, it's game development. It's a tough industry, however you look at it. You know, and when I say you need to be like personal fit, that really has to be looked at. Like I myself, I'm a designer, right? And I mean, generally speaking, just very, very basically, the four types of designers: level, system, experience, and content designer, right? Now, the thing is that working in game development, it's like you have to love the process of making a game, the whole iterative nature, and then showing it publicly to get feedback, and being willing to sacrifice and change, like as a designer, what people don't like, what doesn't work, right? You can't stick by it, because if you're staying in game development as a way to try and make big money and sort of retire early, I personally feel you are completely in the wrong industry here, because here it's about no here it's about a passion for making a game, you know and that's not why you're not here in a sense to make millions. That's always nice, don't get me wrong, money's great, but you're here first because you want to make games. Something about making games is what you enjoy doing, because you're looking at an industry. Let's be honest here, there's a lot of long hours. Entry barriers are high, exit barriers can be even worse, if you try and get out of it when you come in unprepared. So if you're a student, first year, second year, third year even, take some time and make sure you are in the right industry, yeah, for yourself. Because like for most of us, there's a myth going around, and this has been there since before I was a student even, saying that you go game development, you're stuck in one track for life kind of thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. So check and see and make sure that this is the right industry for you before you commit. Yeah? And then wind up doing something you hate for the next 10 years or something. That would be my first piece of advice to aspiring game developers, I suppose, or game development students, is to check the fit. And the second really is to echo on what Aiden said earlier. Literally show your work early and show your work often, because that helps you build networking, that helps you build your knowledge base, that helps you build your skill base. and networking is important. You know, it's always that one guy at random's like, oh yeah, I saw your thing 3 years ago. I remember that. Who is this guy? But networking is a whole other issue there. But yeah, share early, share often, and get the feedback. That's it from me.
All right. Then thank you very much for your messages to our SCM students. Right. So now we were now going to enter the Q&A session for our alumni. So I'm going to be posting some waiting some questions from YouTube and maybe even on Discord. So we give some time for them.
I think in regards to like Adam's comment just now, it's like showing off your work is one good thing, because then people who looking to hire and stuff like that, they will keep an eye on you. It's like, "Oh, this guy can make a game by himself. Okay, let's see how he does next year or next month. See how he comes along." Like people are keeping track and whatnot, because they are looking for not only passionate but also skilled people as well out there in the industry. Like previously, we used to have game dev hangout. That's actually a very good place to showcase our work and whatnot, and get feedback from like-minded developers as well. But we will have to wait for after COVID for that to happen again.
Ah,
Yes, very true. I have not truly experienced that yet, so I'm hoping next year or something like that. Yes.
And it's not just job opportunities, by showing your work, you get to make more friends, and that inherently is a good thing, because you get to make more friends, and people support you. You find like-minded people who can support your work, and you support their work, and you just feel more motivated to do more of this stuff, as opposed to you work on something obscure that nobody sees or nobody knows about. And even if you become really pro at it, you never know that you never find out whether you're actually good at it or not, because you have nothing to compare to. You didn't show it to anyone. Nobody has seen your work. And yeah, I think that showing your work out there is something that is really important. And it's also great to build up your confidence, so that in the future, when as you mature more and as you become a professional, you get to, and when you go out to the industry, you would have the experience of actually talking about your work.
I think I would like to add on to that as well.
Mm.
Just don't. I mean, I recognize there are a lot of us, but I do not know about this batch students or previous batch students. But
Yeah.
majority of us can be a bit shy.
Mm.
Don't be.
ah.
Oh boy.
I mean, yeah, we can be shy, but if let's say you don't have anything to show, even though you're part of the industry, or if let's say you want to hide behind close window because you're still working on it, that's fine. Just
Mm.
go out and talk to other people who have other projects, and then just have a chat with them, like, oh, how do you solve this thing, or what is your design idea behind it, or why is it that you want to create this kind of character. Like, just have a conversation, just have a basic conversations and get to know each other. That's
Mm.
technically how you build networks. Just talk.
Mm. That is very true. When I was starting out, I didn't have much to show as well, but I still went out there anyway, and I talked to people. That's how I got to know the various people that I know right now. In fact, that's actually how I got to know Adam, Edison, and TJ. When I first started studying in KDU, I was very new to the course back then. I didn't have anything to show, but I would often go to my seniors' GPS showcases and talk to them and ask them about their projects. How they do certain things. Like how did they get the inspiration for their game, and that's how I met a lot of my seniors.
If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, that's how I introduced you to Jeremy, right? In one of the college room. I've forgotten where already.
I mean, it's been a long,
No,
it's been a
actually,
long while.
actually for Ammo Box it was like how we ended up like how we ended up was that uh, I showed my FYP project in one of the game dev hangouts. Then
Yeah.
Jeremy hired me as an intern back then. This was back in 2017, and then Edison was also there, which I was quite surprised. And that's how we ended up working together. But we knew each other way before that through KDU.
Mm.
I actually do have another question. Is that from some of us, especially me, that does not has experience in going out and trying to find industry people and talk to people who's like-minded in game development also, how do we actually find those people in a sense of way by talking each other, not through social media or
Okay. If you're looking to sort of connect on a more professional slash business level, if you will, then get your LinkedIn profile up to date and running. In that profile, and now LinkedIn has the feature for free that you can actually link to your own website, your own portfolio, your own HIO, YouTube channel, whatever. So we use that right there. And then the next step from there is find the people who are already in the industry. If you're looking at game journalism, for example, go check out Jason Schreier, hit up Kotaku, hit up IGN SEA. Find the reporters and the people that are covering, I don't know, the kind of games you're interested in, the kind of work you're doing. See what they interact with in terms of content and start commenting there. Engage them directly, tag them. Most of these guys will actually reply you if you reply something concrete that contributes to the discussion. For LinkedIn specifically, the comment that say, "Yay, I support you 100%," that kind of thing, yeah, that gets ignored completely.
Oh,
But if you actually try and engage with these professionals on a professional level, they will generally get back to you. Now, to be fair, in general, they'll get back to you somehow. Sometimes it's just a like. Sometimes they will actually reply you. I've made some connections with different people literally by doing that on LinkedIn. Funnily enough, I mean, it's been said here already that some of us are lacking on the social skills department. Some of us are quite shy. This is true. So actually, this is why it's so important to share your work, whatever you're doing out there. If you can't speak, then let your work speak for you. You know. So that's why you share. You can literally, I mean, HIO pages are free. Go register one under your name. Throw your projects up there. Somebody says, "I'm looking for puzzle design," then you can literally just say, "Hey, check out this thing that I did," and just put the HIO link, let them go and look. You know, if you want to talk more about design, get in touch with me. If they reply, that's a double win. You know, if they don't reply, your work still probably got looked at by somebody who's looking for an idea or a concept or something, and they'll remember you. So this crosses over a bit into networking and how to network. To be very honest, the pandemic has actually shifted all of the networking events online now. Now, in the past, there were events that dabbled a bit. Oh, we have a couple of cameras live streaming things, and all of our panels and discussions are live streamed. Now, everything has to be done that way. What was it? Just recently, Pocket Gamers Digital Connect. That went to the 8th edition, I think, in the last 2 years. They started last year, and the conference used to be like I think it was a twice a year thing. To put it in perspective, now since the pandemic started, they've run the conference 7 times, and round 8, I think, is end of August, early September. Because once you get the framework in place for a digital event, you can just recycle the framework. Breakout rooms, chat system, messaging system, everything can just be recycled and reused without issue. You know? So check out the online events. That would be the next thing I say. I would suggest you look at. You know, things like Pocket Gamers Digital Connect, IGDA. You know, when they have something going on. If you are a female dev in Malaysia, I would suggest looking at the Wig Out group. They are, I think they have their own Discord and stuff. But I'm a guy, so I'm not too sure on the details there, to be honest. Mostly because I'm a guy. Sorry.
Regardless, at least you just as a shout out for the Wing Out the team as well.
Yep.
All right, so now we already approached the last question for this session. So we're going to go enter the Q&A. We got some questions on the YouTube channel itself. So I'll start with the first one.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is everyone here is free to answer. How would you know that you've become a good at your respective fields, be it designer, artist, or programmer?
Ooh.
Oh,
Oh boy.
I think I would
Oh.
like to go back to what I mentioned earlier. Um, it's when you show your work to the public and you get validated for it. There's this YouTuber which I'm following. I watched a video of his a couple of days ago, and one of the things that he mentioned struck me a lot. Uh, he said that the validation of your work is what makes you pro. So by showing your
ah,
work out there and getting people to comment on it, and when people find value in your work, that's what makes you good at what you're doing. You know, when you can bring a certain value to other people.
I think I think that's a fair answer, but I'll point out also that now from a design perspective,
mm,
you need to also consider what kind of validation you want. Some people use games as a means to get a specific message across. Celeste, for example, released a couple of years ago.
ah,
That game was about bringing attention and a spotlight onto certain mental health issues like anxiety, PTSD, somewhat, and things like that. So they didn't make it in terms of, oh, this is an amazing game, but they got a lot of buzz generated about these mental health issues. So for them, for the team behind Celeste, that was the validation they wanted.
Mm,
So just be careful to quantify what kind of validation you're looking for. Like some people actually, I mean, look at the trolls of the internet, guys and girls. They get validation by annoying the hell out of people. Excuse my English, you know? So that's their validation. Doesn't work for us, but that's what they want. That's what they get. They're happy. So
mm,
always make sure you know what you're looking for in terms of validation, before you just go out there, because people can. What was it called? It came out on Steam and Epic a while ago, where the water tastes like wine. That really long game title, but that game has a very specific message that 90% of its players missed. Only 10% got it, and for the dev team behind that game, the fact that 10% got the message was disappointing for them,
oh,
because they hoped that more people would pick up on it. What they actually found was that there is a culture of achievement hunters and completionists that hate them now because of what they did. I won't.
mm.
Should I spoil what happened there or not?
no,
If
let's
you are
not.
looking at it. Okay,
Let's
go look
people
it up now.
try the
Go look
game
it up.
and like experience themselves and like,
Okay.
understand what is
Yeah,
coming
but
from.
caveat, that's only for the PC version of the game. Yeah, if you play it on console, you will not have this. You will not be able to get this. Only for the PC version of the game.
Mm.
Mm.
Actually, funny enough, that's practically art itself. Like even the message for a JRPG game called Persona 4, there is a very
Okay.
unique message they're trying to tell about you have to constantly seek out truth down towards a rabbit hole if let's say you are in this path, but you cannot stop one path and say, okay, case closed, everyone go back home. That's not the message they're trying to tell, but apparently that's what everyone gets. So yeah, I think it's technically what, yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, so let's go on to the next question. This is regarding Steam. So, how long did both Roundtable and Power Studios took the over discussions about fixing and adding features to be compatible? So it's like we did touch upon this earlier on, but maybe like a timeline, like how long did this whole thing work out until Steam gave the green light?
Oh,
For our end, because it's an on and off situation,
yeah.
we took roughly like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah,
4 to
somewhere
5 months.
around
Because
Wow, that's
there.
but
almost half of
but
the.
yeah,
Yeah.
but because of we took the earlier period of time, we thought we repaired everything. So that and then after that, on the third month, once we get all our game down to completion, then it's like okay, then we start producing the assets for Steam. So we thought we submitted everything to Steam. So everything we checks out, everything is green, everything says okay, you can start publishing now. Okay, we go like okay, let's stop here. Down towards the the
1
publishing
week
date,
before launch.
just like no hours before launch, bro.
Yeah, actually,
Hours
yes.
before launch. Suddenly Steam's like, you didn't submit this.
Oh no.
This is that. Yeah, I remember that. That was literally our launch was midnight, and they send us that by email at 9 p.m. And we're sitting there looking at this, going,
What
"What?"
is going on? We were already
They're just trying to
submitted
troll you.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got trolled. So we already submitted the same thing, the exact
It was one
type.
art asset, one Steam graphical asset had been submitted 3 times, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
And we're looking at each other. Did you submit it? I submitted it. You sure? Yes. Here's the screenshot. Are you sure the screenshot is real? Really? You're asking me if it's a real screenshot?
And here's the worst part, it's like months and months ago. I managed to talk with them. They say that yeah, sometimes it's backend error. So
Yeah.
it's clear now. They say it's clear now.
Yeah. And then you go
So-
back in and refresh it, and it's like, yes, that thing is clear. Why is this other thing now in red?
It's
Steam.
a bit of a panic moment, but we learn our lessons.
Yeah.
Mm,
So,
but
yeah.
would that be the same thing for us?
For our studio, I think it was a very different approach because
Oh, okay.
we registered our store page, I think months, many months before even we actually like started to put in all the details.
Yeah.
So we just registered the store page to get the name first, and then
Yeah.
Yeah, that was smooth for us too.
then we only actually went to put everything in within a month before launch, a month or two. So it was just okay, put in all the artwork, put in the achievement stuff, have this, have that, put all the system requirements, everything, the blog post, everything was done within a month or two like that. With a
Oh.
bunch of back and forth. It's like, hey, you need this particular thing, hey, you need that particular thing as well. Yeah, but basically we prepared everything up front first of what potentially we need, and then after that we just one shot, we just shove it all into Steam server. Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah, that's what we did as well. And Steam decided that they were going to have issues with one art asset, just one.
If I remember correctly, it's called the hero banner.
Yes, the hero banner.
Oh, yeah.
That one thing.
So
What does
I
the hero
used-
banner do in the game?
It's actually just one of the art assets for the Steam store page. It has nothing to
and
do with the
also-
game. That's the best part.
And
It's
also
literally
it
a store
goes into
page
the
thing.
library. So once you purchase the game, the library will appear there.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's where it appears on Steam. So,
So my advice to anyone who is putting out their games on Steam, just before, like weeks before you release your game, just check.
yeah,
Like if let's say you do it 9 months ago, just check.
just
Like,
recheck.
Don't check it every single day. That will go drive you crazy. Just on and off, lah. Just on
Yeah,
and off.
check it
Just
every week or
make
so,
sure
I think.
it's green color.
Yeah,
If let's
because
say
the-
it suddenly switch to red or anything, it's like yeah, you better call them.
Because here's the thing, in the Steam end user license agreement thing for publishers, right? It actually says they reserve the right to change things and they don't have to notify you. It actually says that in their EULA terms. So if they suddenly decide that the banner size, this image has to be 3 pixels wider and 2 pixels narrower or whatever, they're not going to tell you. They don't have to tell you. You'll just log in, check, and then go, well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I need to call my graphics guys right now, my artists right now to fix this.
Oh boy.
Yep. So
Okay.
check regularly. Check regularly, definitely.
Okay, let's move on. So this is the last question from our Q&A session. Now, what are the mistakes that you have made as a game developer, both student and alumni, that may perhaps your juniors can learn from?
Would you like that list alphabetically or chronologically?
Okay, maybe just let's say the biggest or maybe your first mistake. Is up to you guys.
Oh, okay. Biggest mistake. Well, that
As
one
Mr.
is-
Johan always say, fail first. Then they just see.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Actually, I will agree on that. Just
Yeah. I would
well,
say
for me, just fail first, lah. Because everyone's experience on failure differently. So it varies differently. Because my failure may not be applied to your failure based on how we develop our game and based on how we communicate with the team. So my advice is that just go head on first and then just, but also do recognize if let's say you're not feel uncomfortable, just talk with your team, lah.
I mean, in other words, embracing failure is one thing to learn, and try not to to see it as no, prioritize on success all the time, and you just have to feel it, take the L, the kind of thing.
a failure means something doesn't work right. Learn from it. Accept the fact that this has failed. Learn from it and move forward. All right. Don't let the failures hold you down. Don't get stuck dwelling on those failures. Okay, because look, game development is a high failure industry. Let's be honest here, guys. Yeah. I mean, a lot of indies don't make it past the 1 year mark. Some don't even get a game out before they crash and burn, unfortunately, for whatever reasons. You know, so learn from your mistakes. And that's how you can improve, or maybe you can learn from whatever failure is, and help make sure that the next team, the next studio that you're with doesn't make that same mistake. I mean, my own biggest mistake, it wasn't me personally, but I had to deal with the fallout of it. This was when I was actually in the publishing side of things. The company I was with, they arranged a tournament for a game, international, a Southeast Asian, right? And I do not know why, but senior management refused to get legal in to actually look at the terms and things in the contracts. And something there got screwed up, you know. And instead of the players, paying for their own tickets and accommodation, somebody basically didn't proofread the thing. Suddenly, the company had to fork out for their flights, their meals, and their accommodations. So when you've got like 16 teams coming in from around Southeast Asia, and you find out literally at the 11th hour this has gone wrong, well, chaos and panic ensues, as you can imagine, because the event ultimately didn't make a profit. We just broke even because the company had to fork out for what 15, I think it what 11 teams of 5 flown in, hotel, transport, meals, everything. So always get somebody, ideally a lawyer, to check your contracts and whatever documents, whatever legally binding agreements you're signing, as a company, as a studio, as a developer. Get somebody with experience to look at that stuff and to double check and triple check that if necessary. Because what's enforceable in court or legally is always what is written down and signed to on paper. I can promise you 1,000,000 ringgit right now on this stream. But unless you've got it in writing with my signature on it, you can't prove anything. You can't prove much with that. Yeah. So always get it checked by legal, and remember that only what is written down can be enforced in any way. This also applies, going back to one of the earliest questions I got asked, between developers and publishers, right? Same deal. Whatever is on the page is what determines what happens. How much influence does the publisher have on, for example, the visual look on your game? I'm going to go with a very, very crude example to make my point here. All right. But do you want, simply put, over sexualized female characters sell? Marketing, publishing side is pushing for that to go into the game, and the developers are pushing back and saying that's not going into the game. What's in the contract determines who will win this argument here. As I said, it's a very simple, slightly crude example, but it illustrates the point of making sure you get somebody who's experienced, ideally a lawyer, to check your contracts before you sign anything, especially at the company level, because there you're talking thousands, hundreds of thousands, if at the AAA level, millions. That would be one thing, lah. I would say that was my biggest and the most painful experience, mistake I could learn from. I'm just glad it wasn't me.
Yeah, how about the rest?
terms of biggest mistakes from the company man itself, I feel one thing for sure is that whatever you write as like a programmer or whatever, be prepared to rewrite it or even go look back at it and whatnot. Because what you write sometimes is not final. A good example of this like through the development of the company man, which took us almost 3 years to make it. We actually rewrote the like simple character movement and stuff about like 3 times along with like the rest of the game as well. So the game had gone through like multiple phases of iteration, not only in terms of artwork, but as well also like the backend of programming, how things interact. So if there's a better way to do it, take a deep look at it, and then once everything is clear, it's like okay, you can set a point of a point onwards to work towards like okay, we're going to fix this and get it done. So holding on to things is not really that.
Add on to that constantly find people to play test Internal play tests, I realized that sometimes it may not work because I was part of the earlier development for Company Man, and for my biggest mistake on that end is that I didn't send out earlier for playtesting, which kind of caused a bit of time So that's I should have pushed more into playtesting, so that we recognize that okay, the designs that I created during that time sucks. It's horrible. So yeah.
Yeah, Aiden, maybe you should ask input on this.
Sorry. On what? On what?
What is is there any mistakes that you have made as a game developer, whether student or alumni, and maybe something your juniors can learn from?
I would say there's a ton of them, definitely. But
Maybe you can pick one that could be considered educational.
Can't find me personally.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of mistakes that I've made. I won't deny that. But yeah, maybe that's a story for another time.
Right. So when I believe we're at the last question of the Q&A session. Thank you very much for providing these 3 questions. Okay, now we're going to go on to the last part of this whole session. So thank you very much again for coming to the alumni talk for Edison, Adam, Aiden, and TJ. So now with that said, we're gonna show off the TAC document link. Give me a moment. All right. So for current UOWKDU students, to attain your TAC points, again, step 1, take 2 minimum unique screenshots of this event for your report to SCC, and fill this event's TAC registration form, which is available at this bit.ly link, and you can scan this QR code. I'll give you guys a few seconds for that.
Click.
Not much apologies for that. Yeah. Just give a few moments for the screen to be up. Technical difficulties is an issue all the time.
Good old friend.
Yep. All right, it's back up. So let's give you a few moments where you want to scan the QR code or go to the bit.ly link. Take 2 screenshots. Hope you guys did that. And without further ado, this now that you can take your screenshots, this event is done by the Dice Collective, which is a part of the School of Computing and Creative Media. This is actually a student body within SCCM, and it covers all the the courses from UBGD, Bachelor Game Development, computing as well, diploma sequential art, and our recent digital media productions. And you can follow us on Instagram and Discord by scanning on these two dinosaurs here. We will post updates on current and future events on our Instagram as well as the Discord server. And there's our email, our Instagram link, and our Discord link as well. Invite. And last but not least, thank you for coming to this alumni talk session. This is organized by University of Wollongong, Malaysia KDU, in which the Australian Quality Education sold at Malaysian prices, and this in conjunction with the School of Computing and Creative Media, Student Alumni Center, and the Dice Collective. So now you want to learn more about the Bachelor Game Development's the course itself. You can head over to www.uowm.kdu.edu.my, scan the QR code here, and you can even follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and our itch.io, which is a home for all our student games that's available. You get to speak to our lecturers and even students. Head over to our Facebook page and Discord. Yes. And once again, thank you all for coming. And this is today on Friday. And thank you all for coming again. Signing off.